My name is Terrence Kapur. I'm a senior here at UNC Chapel Hill, and this is my final project for Comp 572, Computational Photography. This is seam carving. So first, what is seam carving? So if I ever wanted to shrink or enlarge an image, instead of simply cropping it and potentially cutting out the details and content within, I would turn to something called seam carving. A seam is a connected path of low energy pixels in an image. And in this project, I focused on writing code specifically to shrink an image, not enlarge an image. So how did I do it? First, I created an energy function to determine the importance of pixels. My energy function shows the gradient of a given image. Using dynamic programming and a version of Dijkstra's algorithm, I determined a singular path of pixels, either horizontally or vertically, depending on what the user selected, that is the least important to the image, or more simply, just a path that, when removed, should be the least noticeable. After that, I remove that horizontal or vertical path, and I continue on until the desired number of pixels to be removed is fully iterated through. In my code, I allowed the user to set how many pixels they wanted to shrink the image by. And you'll see in the future slide that choosing to shrink by more and more pixels can begin to have some very interesting and honestly some terrifying effects on a given image. So first, the first image I'll show you guys is a sunset. This is a horizontal shrinkage. This one was shrunk by about 150 pixels. You can see that it's choosing to go up here in the sky, sort of where there will be the least noticeable effects on the image. For time's sake, I'm going to move on. Here is a vertical shrinkage, and this one is about 125 pixels to be shrunken by. And what's interesting here is you can see that if this was cropped, this shadow would probably get cut off, or over here this tree would get cut off. But because it was shrunk using seam carving, the shadow is still intact. It obviously looks a little bit different than the original image, a little bit more compressed. But yeah, that's one of the benefits of seam carving. Next, here is a much bigger image. This is a horizontal shrinkage by about 200 pixels. You can see obviously it prioritizes the sky. Probably had a lot of low energy paths in it. Now we can look here, and this is where you can begin to see some very interesting things with seam carving. So I did a vertical shrink on Anakin Skywalker here as he's burned to death. And yeah, it had some very interesting effects. I was glad that it kept his shoulders intact, but obviously it would have been better if it also shrunk the face a little bit, because it looks very disproportionate. But I was glad that it kept his shoulders in the frame, whereas a crop would have just it would have just had his face at the end of it. And then you can see my friend here. I did a horizontal crop, and you can begin to see how terrifying he looks. He already looks terrifying just to begin with. So after a horizontal shrinkage, I mean, it's just nightmare fuel. So yeah, then this is the final image I'm going to show. And this shows that this was a horizontal and vertical shrinkage on one image, and it shows how interesting with geometric lines. You can see on the left side of the basketball court that they become pretty noticeably messed up. So that's definitely something I'd like to improve upon. My closing thoughts: my energy function produced decent results, and so did my algorithm, but there's certainly room for improvement. The paths with the least amount of energy being chosen seem to be too linear sometimes, so I can definitely improve upon Dijkstra's algorithm. And as shown in the last image, geometric lines can be difficult to work with, so if I had more time, I would look into solving those distortion errors. Thank you for listening.